In a recent article published by the American Institute of Stress entitled "Stress is Killing You," 44% of Americans are feeling more stressed than they were 5 years ago. 1 in 5 Americans experience extreme stress, which includes shaking, heart palpitations, and depression. The article also states 60% of all human illness and disease can be traced back to stress. On today's show, Dr. Dennis Garcia from WSU's Health and Wellness Service is back with us today to talk about stress, how we can take care of ourselves, and some ways to keep the stress down. And welcome to this week's xConnect Northwest, connecting you to the experts. I'm your host, Greg Mills, and today we have Dr. Dennis Garcia. Now, before we get going, just a reminder that you at home can chime in with your questions. All you have to do is connect with us on Twitter at NWPTV, or use hashtag xConnectNW. On Facebook, search Northwest Public Television, or by email, kwsutv@wsu.edu. Thanks for joining us again today, and thanks for you at home for joining us on the show. How are you?
Thanks.
It's good to have you back.
Glad to be here.
Yeah. We're talking about stress, and it's something that's part of all of our lives in one way or another, some a lot more than others.
Right.
Let's start by really trying to get our heads around a definition of stress. Can you come up with something that really tells the story of what it is?
There's a real basic definition that we can use, but before we get to my definition, one thing I always say to my patients is, we all have stress, and if we didn't have stress, we'd be dead. And so with that in mind, stress can be good and it can be bad.
Okay.
Now, the definition basically is the brain's and the body's response to demand. That demand can be physical or emotional. And so stress can affect us in both ways.
What is happening sort of physically to our bodies when we're stressed out? And our minds, for that matter, but it's all sort of connected, I'm sure. Can you describe what's really happening, what's going on in our bodies?
So there's several ways to look at it. One is the basic primitive reflex that we have to stress. And if you go back to the caveman time or to animals, and all animals experience stress, and that is that fight or flight phenomenon. Stress is presented. It's either time to face it and fight it, or put your running shoes on and go and get away from the danger that's presented to you. But what's going on inside of you is when stress starts to occur, whether it's a good or a bad or positive or negative, it causes your heart rate to speed up, causes your blood vessels to dilate, and for the obvious reason of getting more blood supply to the muscles in case you are choosing the flight route. In the fight route, it means you're staying there and you're taking it and you're waiting for what's going to happen. Now, we all don't get in a fight every time we get stressed. However, our body is generating these chemicals. It's generating the changes, the physiologic changes, and it has an effect on you. For most people, I think they manage that effect pretty easily. But some people don't, and it creates issues for us, so to speak.
And let's talk about some of the different ways that we handle it, and we'll talk about that in a couple of different ways, I think, before we're done here. But if you're somebody who is faced, and we're talking about a situation, the fight or flight thing that you're talking about, where you have to make a decision one way or the other. You're either going to hang in there and fight. But I don't know that we always equate that with the kind of stress that we're feeling before a test for students, before a job interview, or if you're in a situation where you're concerned about your livelihood in one way or another that puts that kind of stress on you. That's still that same fight or flight kind of thing, and the same things are happening in your body, is that right?
Right, absolutely, and those are the things that do affect us from a medical standpoint. Again, so we should categorize it mild, moderate, or extreme. Okay. Mild stress is that everyday thing of, got to get up, go to work, be there at 8 o'clock, be there on time, so make sure you get up on time. That too has its physiological effects on you. But that's just everyday stress. That kind of stress does, I think, doesn't have any kind of negative effect on your body. And most people wouldn't consider that stress. However, if it's moderate or extreme, then we've all heard of those antioxidants that you want to use to make your body healthy. Well, that's because stress is creating these things called oxidants or superoxides that are circulating in your body and can have negative effects on your health. Some of the most common things that people are familiar with is a lot of stress can affect your immune system. And it decreases your immune system's ability to fight off viruses.
Sure.
So if you're under a lot of stress, you're not feeling it, I guess, you're more susceptible to viruses. You can get the influenza, you can get other sort of seasonal viruses more frequently. You're more susceptible to infection, pneumonias, etc. From the immune system perspective. As far as like the digestive system is another common one where people are affected by stress, and such as ulcers or reflux. Your stomach starts burning, it starts hurting, and it's because this stress is causing an increased acid production in your stomach that's eroding the lining that's giving you the ulcer. So that's another way to how stress can affect you.
So if you take that one step further and get into the extreme part of it, now we're talking about some physical maladies that can really take you down at some point, I would imagine, if somebody's really under a high amount of stress.
Right, absolutely. And this is where when your stress becomes that extreme level, and then it starts to contribute or create anxiety.
Yeah.
That you start having the symptoms that are much like a panic attack, heart palpitations, indecisiveness, feeling of doom, like the world's closing in on you, creating almost like a post-traumatic stress disorder.
Right. It sounds like we're getting into depression a little bit too when we talk about that.
Correct.
Yeah.
If it's ongoing, persistent, it's been going on for a long time, it starts to affect your sleep. You're not sleeping well at night. You develop insomnia. You develop, like I said, the panic disorder. And of course, it can get you down to where you start developing depression, apathy, sometimes anger, sometimes aggressive behavior. And that tends to be more along the extreme. But low-grade moderate stress can also lead to that if you're, let's say, sleep deprived on a nightly basis. Yeah. Or there's too much on your plate. You got too much going on and you're not dealing with it very well. And there's ways to deal with it.
Yeah, yeah. Some people either say they do or do have a higher tolerance for stress. Is that a reality?
Yeah, that's very much. And,
Okay.
and some of that is personality driven, but some of it is also lifestyle choices.
Okay.
For example, people who, and we've talked on this subject in the past about regular activity and exercise that really helps decrease the stress level, gets the nervous energy out of your body. So people who tend to live their life in moderation, meaning they exercise regularly, they eat healthy, they avoid certain foods, drugs, and chemicals in their body, seem to handle stress a little bit better. Some of those things you should avoid, I think this is important for us to mention to our audience, is alcohol and stimulants. Alcohol can have a negative effect. For some people, having an alcoholic beverage kind of calms you down, relaxes you a little bit. But any more than that starts to have a negative effect on your body, and it doesn't allow you to sleep normally. Inhibits some of your immune system's functions. So not a good idea to participate regularly in alcohol if you're pretty stressed.
And I imagine that translates to other drugs as well. If you're using something to get you to a place where you're not stressed out, you obviously are too stressed out to begin with. Is that fair to say?
And correctly. So it's a vicious cycle. You know, you're stressed, you're not sleeping well, you're having some insomnia, you're taking in extra caffeine during the day to keep yourself up at night. That's speeding up your heart rate, that's making you more anxious, that's upsetting your stomach, and it snowballs. And now you're in this vicious cycle of going around and around and around. And that doesn't help the situation.
I imagine not.
Yeah.
Where does food come into play? About what are some foods that are maybe good to make sure you're eating? Obviously, we're probably in the fruits and vegetables and a good diet. But are there more specifics about that?
Yeah, there's more foods to avoid.
Okay.
Sort of. We kind of touched on that. The stimulants, the processed foods, the alcohol. You kind of want to avoid those because they're not helping you in the long run. Foods that are helpful is fresh fruits and vegetables because they're high in oxidants. I mean antioxidants.
Yeah.
They help counterbalance those oxidants that are being created by the stress. So fresh fruits and vegetables are helpful. Lots of water. Your body needs water to process all of these things and flush it out of your system is helpful. Minimizing the caffeine intake definitely helps. So those are important foods that are helpful. And I hate to promote vitamins because generally speaking, if you're eating healthy, you don't need vitamins. But sometimes certain vitamins are helpful as well. Some doctors will promote the B vitamins as a reasonable source to help with the antioxidants.
Okay, okay. If we're finding it difficult to find the time to get our stress level down, if the daily thing is what's really keeping us kind of high-strung or stressed out, are there some suggestions about things you can do where you feel like you just have a pretty minimal amount of time to take care of it?
Yeah, there's lots of things you can do. Depending on what your interests are, and again, another thing we've touched on in the past is ways to exercise well. There's ways to de-stress, such as the ones that people commonly find beneficial are things like meditation, yoga, Tai Chi, and those are all three things that you can do in the comfort of your own living room.
Sure.
You don't necessarily have to go somewhere to do that. Going for a simple walk, trying to just spend some alone time and relax on your own and not allow the outside forces to create more stress for yourself. Simple things like going to a movie, maybe not a real shoot 'em up, bang 'em up movie, but maybe an enjoyable movie that's not going to bring up your blood pressure.
Yeah, I can see that. Tell me about positive stress real quickly here. What you mentioned early on in the conversation that it can be good for you and it's necessary. We'd all die if we didn't have it, right? So what is good about it?
Yeah, well, again, that's where we drop back down to the mild stress. Mild stress is good. Like exercising is considered a mild to moderate form of stress, and it's something you choose to do. So it stimulates your heart rate, it helps decrease your cholesterol levels, increases your circulation, and so that's a mild form of stress that's good. Weight training, lifting weights, that's very stressful on your body, but it's a good stress. It helps maintain your strength, maintain your balance, maintain your focus. When you physically exert yourself, it gets rid of, again, this nervous energy that's in your body so that you can focus in and stay concentrated on your task at hand.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm sure there is almost a direct correlation between your overall mental health and how much stress you're dealing with, how you're handling it. Where does that put you mentally if you're dealing with a bunch of stress? I mean, we all know that we don't function as well, but where does it lead to, I guess is what the question is.
Right, if stress is overwhelming you, then obviously it's going to impact your relationships. You're not going to be a pleasant person. Your spouse or your children aren't going to want to be around you, or it's the classic scene where the man comes home from work and yells at the kids and kicks the dog, and that's all your mood and your attitude. You need to realize that it's affecting you. For one, listen to the people that are around you, and then ask for help. There's nothing embarrassing about asking for help. People can give you ideas how to decrease your stress, and we offer things like that here at the university. We call them stress reduction skills, coping skills, biofeedback. Those are all things that have been shown to be really helpful for helping people manage their lives.
And if people want to get in touch with you personally and maybe probe a little deeper into a question, how can they do that?
Yeah, very simple. I mean, I work for the university, so my email is public. They can send me an email, and if I have time, I'll respond, and I usually do.
Just follow you through the Health and Wellness Center here at Washington State University.
Right, and over at Health and Wellness Services, we have a very good website that shows all our services, and it does explain in some detail what our services are and can give you ideas where you can go.
Well, thanks a lot for joining us. I hope we can keep our stress level down as a result.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was fun.
Absolutely. Remember, you can stay connected with us all week. Just tweet us. You can like us on Facebook. You can add us to your circle on Google+, or email us at kwsutv@wsu.edu and send us your show ideas. Now, if you miss any part of today's show, it'll be available online at nwptv.org. Next time on xConnect Northwest, we're going to talk with local musical composers Ryan Hare and Scott Blasco about contemporary art music and listen to a performance. Make sure to join us. If you have questions about contemporary art, music, want to just hear the music composed by area people, don't forget to tune in next week. I'm Greg Mills. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on air and online.